The observation deck hummed with the usual electronic chatter of a dozen species trying to pretend they understood what they were watching. I pressed my secondary sensory ridge against the transparent aluminum, watching the newest batch of human recruits stumble through their first day at the Galactic Defense Academy. Most were exactly what I expected. Loud, less overconfident. Typical mammals who thought opposable thumbs made them special. Then there was her. Kira Voss sat in the back corner of the training hall so still she could have been a statue, while the other humans chattered and gestured wildly, introducing themselves with that peculiar enthusiasm their species was famous for. She simply existed. Her dark eyes tracked everything, everyone, but her mouth sealed tighter than a vacuum lock. That one, my colleague Threx muttered, his three eyes blinking in sequence. The quiet female. Something's wrong with her. I clicked my mandibles in amusement. Because she's not making noise? Perhaps she's simply more intelligent than the rest. No. Threx's tail coiled nervously. Run her file again. I want to see her psychological evaluation. I pulled up the holographic display, scrolling through Kira Voss's records. Human, female, 23 standard cycles. Enlisted voluntarily from some backwater colony called New Perth. Physical scores, average. Academic scores, average. Psychological evaluation passed, with standard parameters. Nothing remarkable. Nothing concerning. Nothing that explained why the fur on the back of my neck was standing up. The first combat simulation began 3 hours later. Standard scenario. Hostage rescue in a derelict station. The humans were divided into teams of 5. Kira ended up with 4 of the loudest recruits in the entire cohort, which I suppose was cosmically funny in a way. Their leader, a muscular male named Briggs, immediately started barking orders like he was some kind of seasoned commander, instead of a farm kid who'd probably never seen real combat. Kira said nothing. She checked her weapon, a standard plasma rifle that looked oversized in her slender hands, and moved to the rear of the formation. She's going to get them all killed, Threx predicted. Watch, she'll panic, freeze up, probably shoot one of her own teammates. I would have agreed, except for one thing. Kira's vitals on the monitor were completely calm. Heart rate, 68 beats per minute. Respiration, normal. Stress hormones, baseline. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't excited. She was waiting. The simulation began. The team breached the station through a damaged airlock, moving through corridors filled with holographic hostiles. Briggs and his friends did exactly what undertrained recruits always do. They shot at everything, used terrible tactical positioning, and wasted ammunition like it was infinite. Kira drifted through the chaos like smoke. She fired 3 times in the first 5 minutes. Each shot dropped a hostile that none of her teammates had even noticed. An enemy hiding in a ventilation shaft. Another crouched behind a false wall panel. A third lying prone in the shadows of an overhead gantry. Luck, Threx said, but his voice had lost its confidence. The simulation escalated. More enemies. Heavier weapons. The hostages were in a sealed vault at the station's core. Briggs got his team pinned down in a junction with no cover, exactly like the idiot he was proving to be. They were taking simulated damage, their armor indicators flashing red and yellow. That's when Kira moved. She didn't speak, didn't warn them. She simply stepped out of cover and walked straight into the enemy fire lane. She's committing suicide, Threx shouted, except she wasn't. Kira moved like she could see 3 seconds into the future. She ducked under one plasma bolt without looking at it, sidestepped another, rolled beneath a third. Her rifle barked out precise, economical shots. 4 enemies down in 6 seconds. She grabbed a grenade from a fallen hostile, threw it blind around a corner, and the explosion cleared the next room before her teammates even realized what was happening. She reached the vault control panel, bypassed the security in 42 seconds, which was actually the Academy record, but nobody seemed to notice, and extracted all 6 hostages without taking a single hit. The simulation ended. Final score, flawless victory. 0 casualties. Briggs and his team were celebrating, high-fiving and chest-bumping like they'd actually contributed something. Kira walked past them, set her rifle on the rack, and sat back down in her corner. Silent. Still, Her heart rate had never risen above 75 beats per minute. Threx and I stared at the data feeds. "Run it again," I said quietly. We ran 7 more simulations over the next 4 days. Urban warfare, shipboarding, planetary defense, assassination prevention. Each scenario harder than the last. Each designed to push recruits to their breaking point. Kira never spoke. Not once. Not to coordinate with her team. Not to acknowledge orders. Not even to confirm she'd heard the mission briefing. She simply acted, moving through combat scenarios with an efficiency that was frankly disturbing. Her teammates loved her at first. After all, her performance made them look good. But by day 6, I noticed something changing. They started avoiding her, sitting on the opposite side of the mess hall, requesting different team assignments. I pulled Briggs aside after training. "What's the problem with Voss?" He shifted uncomfortably, looking everywhere except at me. Humans usually loved complaining. The fact that he was hesitant meant something had genuinely rattled him. "She's not right, sir," he finally said. "I mean, she's brilliant, scary good, but it's like fighting next to a machine. She never talks, never reacts. In that urban warfare sim, when Marcus got hit, she didn't even check on him. Just stepped over his body and kept moving. And her eyes, sir," he shuddered. "When she's in combat mode, her eyes go completely flat, like there's nobody home." I dismissed him, but his words echoed in my head. I reviewed the urban warfare footage. He was right. When Kira's teammate Marcus took a simulated chest shot and went down screaming, a normal human would have shown concern. Fear. Kira had glanced at him for exactly 1.3 seconds, calculated he wasn't in immediate danger, and continued her objective. Efficient. Logical. Completely inhuman. "We need to escalate testing," Threx said during our evening meeting. His scales had taken on a grayish tint, which meant he was genuinely worried. "Standard protocols aren't revealing anything useful. We need to see how she handles genuine stress. The Academy Council won't approve live fire exercises for first-cycle recruits. Then, we use psychological pressure." Threx pulled up a new simulation design. Ethical dilemmas. Impossible choices. See if we can crack that shell and find out what's actually inside. I should have said no. Should have recognized we were crossing lines for all the wrong reasons. But Kira Voss had gotten under my scales. I needed to understand what she was. We designed a nightmare, a simulation where there were no good choices, where every decision led to casualties, where the only way to win was to accept that people would die and choose who it would be. We called it the Kobayashi Protocol, stolen from some old human legend. Threx found that amusing. I found it necessary. Kira entered the simulation bay alone. We'd isolated her from her team, told her this was an individual assessment. The scenario was brutal, a colony under attack, limited evacuation shuttles, 3,000 civilians who needed rescue, and time for maybe 800. Choose who lives, choose who dies. Break. The simulation began. Warnings flashed across Kira's helmet display, enemy ships approaching. 30 minutes until orbital bombardment. The civilians flooded toward the evac zone, parents clutching children, elderly being carried by the young, everyone screaming and begging. Kira's vitals remained absolutely steady. She pulled up a holographic display, scanning the civilian database. Her fingers flew over the controls. She was categorizing them, sorting them like cargo. "What is she doing?" Threx whispered. I couldn't answer. I was too busy watching Kira Voss reduce 3,000 living, breathing, simulated people into a mathematical equation. She weighted genetic diversity, age, skill sets, reproductive capacity. She built a survivor manifest in 11 minutes that maximized the colony's chance of long-term survival. It was brilliant. It was monstrous. It was exactly what a cold, calculating AI would do. The evacuation began. The chosen civilians boarded the shuttles. The rest realized they'd been sentenced to death. They rioted. Some tried to force their way onto the ships. Others begged. A mother held up her baby, screaming for Kira to take her child instead. Kira shot her. Non-lethal, just enough to drop her and clear the way. She dragged the woman aside, set the baby with the approved evacuees, and continued loading shuttles. She saved 817 people. She condemned 2,183 to die. She did it without hesitation, without a single word, without any change in her heart rate. When the simulation ended and the bay lights came up, Kira removed her helmet. Her face was blank, empty. She walked past us toward the exit. "Recruit Voss." My voice cracked on her name. You performed exceptionally. But I need to ask, how do you feel about the choices you made in there? She stopped, turned, looked directly at me with those flat, dark eyes, and for the first time since arriving at the academy, Kira Voss spoke. "Feeling is irrelevant, sir. I completed the objective." Then she left. Threx and I sat in the empty observation deck for a long time after that. The data scrolled across our screens. Performance perfect. Efficiency maximum. Psychological stability questionable. "We need to classify her," Threx said finally. "File a report with command. That human is dangerous." I started writing the report at 0200 hours. By 0400 I'd escalated it to priority alpha. By 0600, 3 senior commanders had reviewed the file. By 0800 Kira Voss had been flagged with a classification I'd only seen twice before in my 15-year career. Galaxy-class threat. Not because of her physical abilities, not because of her intelligence, but because of what she represented. A human who'd somehow shed every emotional limitation that kept her species balanced, who could make terrible choices without guilt, who could kill without remorse, who could watch the world burn and calculate the optimal escape trajectory. The commanders scheduled a meeting for the following day. They wanted to interview Kira personally, decide if she was an asset or a threat that needed to be eliminated. I should have been relieved. Should have been glad someone else would make that decision. Instead, I spent the entire night reviewing her files again, looking for something I'd missed, some explanation for what Kira Voss had become, and I found it, buried in her medical records. A single line that changed everything. Previous occupation, grief counselor. New Perth colony. Specialty mass casualty events. The next morning when they came to collect Kira Voss for her interview, her bunk was empty, her locker was cleared. Security footage showed her leaving the academy at 0300 hours, walking past 6 different checkpoints without anyone stopping her. She'd vanished like she'd never existed at all, and somewhere in the depths of space a silent human who'd learned to turn off her heart to save others was loose in the galaxy. That's when I realized we hadn't been testing her. She'd been testing us. The emergency session of the Academy Council convened at 0900 hours sharp. 12 species represented, all of them demanding answers about how a single human recruit had walked out of the most secure military facility in 3 sectors without triggering a single alarm. I stood before them, mandibles clicking nervously, while Threx displayed the security footage for the 7th time. "She knew," Commander Yalix hissed. Her reptilian features twisted in fury. She knew exactly where every camera blind spot was located, every guard rotation, every door override code. "Impossible," argued Councillor Dremic, his tentacles writhing. "First cycle recruits don't have access to that information. The security architecture is classified at level 9. Then explain this." Threx zoomed in on the footage timestamped 0247 hours. Kira Voss, walking down corridor 12. A maintenance bot rolled past her. For exactly 2.3 seconds, the camera glitched. When it cleared, Kira had moved 40 meters down the hallway, far beyond what should have been possible in that time frame. She used the maintenance tunnel access behind the 3rd support column, I said quietly. The one that's not listed on any official schematics because it was supposed to be sealed after the expansion project 3 cycles ago. The council chamber fell silent. "How would she know about that?" Yalix demanded. I pulled up another file. Because 17 hours before she left, she volunteered for janitorial duty. Said she wanted to, and I'm quoting here, help maintain facility cleanliness standards. The supervising officer thought it was adorable, a human trying to be useful. He gave her unrestricted access to the maintenance database. Threx's scales had gone completely grey. She played us, From the moment she arrived, she was gathering intelligence. The silence, the compliance, the perfect performance. It was all calculated to make us underestimate her, or overestimate her, Councillor Dremick suggested. Perhaps the goal was to make us afraid, to get herself classified as a galaxy-class threat. The question is why? That question haunted me for the next 6 days. While Fleet Intelligence searched 15 star systems for any trace of Kira Voss, I couldn't stop thinking about that single line in her medical file. Grief counselor, mass casualty event. What kind of events required specialized grief counselors? I dug deeper into New Perth's history. What I found made my blood run cold. New Perth wasn't just a backwater colony. 8 years ago, it had been a thriving settlement of 40,000 humans. Then the Krellick Syndicate attacked. Pirates looking for easy slaves and resources. The colony defense force fought back, but they were hopelessly outmatched. The battle lasted 3 days. The survivors numbered 6,000, mostly children and elderly. Everyone of combat age had died defending them, except the grief counselors. The Syndicate had kept them alive specifically to manage the traumatized survivors, to keep them compliant, to make them easier to process and sell. Kira Voss had spent 2 years in Syndicate captivity, 2 years watching the children she was supposed to comfort being sold to the highest bidder, 2 years learning exactly how monsters thought, how they operated, what made them feel safe. She'd escaped during a fleet raid. Official report said she'd been found in a maintenance closet, catatonic with trauma. Standard recovery time for Syndicate survivors was 18 months of intensive therapy. Kira had been cleared for normal activity in 6 weeks. The therapist's notes said she'd made, quote, remarkable progress. She talked through her trauma, processed her grief, accepted what happened. I pulled her therapy session recordings, with proper authorization, of course. What I heard made my secondary heart skip beats. Session after session of Kira, talking, crying, expressing appropriate emotions, saying exactly what the therapists needed to hear. Each session perfectly calculated to convince them she was healing. She'd been acting, just like she'd acted for us. The question was still why. The answer came 12 days after her disappearance. A Krellick Syndicate supply depot in the Outer Rim exploded. No warning, no demands, just a cargo hauler flying straight into their fuel storage at full velocity. 300 Syndicate members killed instantly. Security footage from a nearby station showed a human female purchasing passage on that hauler 6 hours before impact. Average height, dark hair, paid in untraceable credits. The pilot's body was never found in the wreckage. Neither was anyone else's. Just Syndicate members who'd been loading shipments when the ship hit. Shipments of children bound for the slave markets. Threx reviewed the footage with me in my quarters. We'd stopped filing official reports at this point. Some truths weren't meant for the council. She's hunting them, he said, using everything she learned about their operations during captivity, everything she learned about infiltration and intelligence gathering from us. She's systematically destroying the Syndicate. One person can't take down an entire criminal empire, I argued, but my conviction was weak. A normal person? No. But Kira Voss isn't normal. We trained her, remember? Gave her advanced tactical instruction, weapons expertise, security protocols. We turned a survivor into a weapon and then labeled her a threat. And now she's proving us right. 3 more attacks followed over the next month, each one surgical, each one targeting Syndicate operations that dealt specifically in trafficking survivors from colony raids. Kira was systematically dismantling the same pipeline that had sold children from her home. The Syndicate put a bounty on her. 10 million credits. Dead or alive. Didn't matter. They called her the Silent Ghost. Said she never made a sound when she came for you. Fleet Intelligence tracked her to a station called Gamma Outpost, a known Syndicate waypoint. They sent a full tactical team, 20 of our best operatives. Orders were to capture if possible, eliminate if necessary. I monitored the operation from the command center, watched the team breach the station, clear room after room. They found evidence everywhere. Kira had been there. Data cores downloaded. Security compromised. supply manifests copied, but she was gone. And in the station's central hub, she'd left a message, written on the wall in red paint. 3 words that made my blood freeze. You taught well. The tactical team found something else. A data chip, taped beneath the message. It contained financial records, transit logs, communication intercepts. 3 years' worth of intelligence on syndicate operations across 7 sectors. Everything needed to cripple their trafficking network. Everything Kira had gathered during her silent hunt. She was sharing her research, giving us the tools to finish what she'd started. The council convened again, this time behind closed doors. No official record. Just 12 scared bureaucrats trying to decide what to do about a human who'd beaten us at our own game. We could use this intelligence, Councillor Dremix suggested. Launch a coordinated strike against every location on these files. Destroy the syndicate trafficking operations completely, and reward her for desertion. Yalix spat. She's a rogue operative, a threat. We classified her as such. We classified her as Galaxy class, I said, surprising myself by speaking up. That classification exists for individuals whose actions can fundamentally alter the balance of power. We assumed it was a warning, a reason to eliminate her. But maybe we had it backwards. Threx understood immediately. Maybe Galaxy class doesn't mean a threat to the galaxy. Maybe it means a threat to those who threaten the galaxy. The silence that followed was profound. Commander Yalix finally spoke, her voice bitter. You're suggesting we legitimize her, make her some kind of sanctioned operative. I'm suggesting we recognize reality, I said. Kira Voss doesn't need our approval or our resources. She's already doing the work. The only question is whether we help her or get in her way. And I remind the Council that every time we've underestimated humans, it's ended badly for us. The vote was close, 7-5. The Council authorized Operation Silent Guardian. We'd use Kira's intelligence to strike at the Syndicate. And if we happen to leave certain pathways open, certain security gaps exploitable, certain targets softened for a solo operative, while bureaucratic oversight could only extend so far. I never saw Kira Voss again. None of us did. But over the following year, syndicate trafficking operations collapsed. 43 major hubs destroyed. 2,000 children recovered and returned to their families. The survivors from New Perth finally got their justice. Fleet intelligence occasionally caught glimpses. A human female buying passage to a known syndicate location. Security footage glitching at convenient moments, explosions with no clear cause, and always, in the aftermath, liberated captives who spoke of a silent figure who'd opened their cages and vanished before they could say thank you. The bounty on the silent ghost increased to 50 million credits. Nobody ever collected. How do you catch someone who learned to become a shadow by surviving in the dark? Threx and I were reassigned after that year. Promoted, technically, given new responsibilities training the next generation of recruits. We never spoke about Kira Voss in official capacity, but sometimes, late at night in the observation deck, we'd review the old footage, watch her move through those early simulations with that eerie precision. Do you think she planned it from the beginning? Threx asked once, joining the academy, learning from us, using us as a stepping stone. I clicked my mandibles thoughtfully. I think she was a grief counselor who watched children die and decided never again. I think she found herself in a position to learn from the galaxy's best military trainers and was smart enough to take advantage, and I think when we labeled her a threat instead of an asset, she decided she didn't need us anyway. Are there more like her? More humans who can just turn off their emotions and become weapons? That was the question that haunted me. I'd studied human psychology extensively after Kira. What I learned was terrifying and inspiring in equal measure. Humans didn't just turn off their emotions, they weaponized them. Kira hadn't stopped feeling. She'd focused all that grief and rage into a single purpose. Every child she saved was the children of New Perth she couldn't save. Every syndicate member she eliminated was vengeance for the counselors who died in captivity. Humans didn't break, they transformed. And that made them more dangerous than any species in the galaxy. Yes, I finally answered, there are more like her. thousands, maybe millions. Humans who've survived the unsurvivable and came out changed. The question isn't whether they exist. The question is whether they're on our side. 5 years later, I received a package at my home address. No return label. Inside was a data chip and a handwritten note. The handwriting was precise, economical, just like everything else about her. The note said, "The syndicate is finished. The children are home. Thank you for teaching me the difference between following orders and doing what's right. Some threats exist to protect the galaxy from worse threats. Remember that." It was signed with a single initial. The data chip contained locations of 17 other trafficking networks operating in uncharted space. Non-syndicate operations, smaller but equally vicious. Each file meticulously documented with the same precision she'd used on that first Kobayashi protocol simulation. She was still out there, still hunting, still saving those who couldn't save themselves. And somewhere in a classified file buried deep in Academy archives, Kira Voss remained listed as a Galaxy-class threat. The Council never changed her classification. How could they? She'd proven them right in every way that mattered. But I added one word to her file. A personal note that only someone with my clearance level would ever see. One word that explained everything about the human who never spoke in training but said everything through action. Kira, the galaxy is vast and full of dangers, predators and parasites who prey on the weak. And somewhere in that darkness, a silent human moves from shadow to shadow, carrying the grief of her lost world and transforming it into salvation for others. We called her a threat. We were terrified of what she represented, and we were right to be afraid, just not for the reasons we thought. Because the real threat wasn't Kira Voss. It was what she proved about humanity, that they can survive the worst we can imagine, that they can learn from anyone, even their enemies, that they can take their pain and forge it into purpose, and that when you corner a human, when you hurt their children, when you make them choose between breaking and becoming something more, they'll become something more every single time. The Syndicate learned that lesson too late. Others are learning it now. And me? I sleep better knowing that somewhere out there, a silent guardian is watching over the innocent. Even if that guardian is the same person we once feared, especially because she's the person we once feared. That's the thing about Galaxy-class threats. Sometimes the biggest threat to evil is exactly the kind of person who makes comfortable bureaucrats nervous. Kira Voss never spoke in training, but her actions spoke louder than any words ever could. And the galaxy is better for it, whether the Council wants to admit it or not.